you mind if I interrupt? I was just want to introduce the third panel member to you, Martin Shepherdly. He works with BeThere Global. They do all of the stuff that the technology offers. So live streaming, webcasts. What else?
Basically, it's about taking conference content and making it available to a remote audience, whether that be on the web or mobile device.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear in the back? No.
No,
So
closer.
I have to put this up a little and be quite close, actually. All right.
Close enough?
That's better. Yes. Could we have the first question? Yes, please.
Yes, I have a question. This question is for both Davi and Ben. I would like to know what are the comparable advantages of videotaping the Congress versus webcast. And by advantages, I would like to know in terms of increased attendance, additional revenue generated, either directly through fees or indirectly through sponsorship. That's my question.
Want to know anything else?
Just
It's a very good, detailed question. Lovely. There you go.
For the ESC example, with the product which they called ESC 365 for obvious reasons, there was no distinction between, I mean, the terminology, that's what we were talking about. The words which we're using is debatable, but web broadcasting. So web broadcasting, whether or not it's live or of the ESC, what they did is they got it online within 24 hours. And I think that's what PCMA do, and the ECR, it was really live. But with the 365 thing, because it was depending on sponsorship revenues for the live and for the post-event, it didn't make any difference. They were using pretty much the same platform. I think that the emotive... Sorry, I'm speaking about the live. With the 365, there was a delay. There's a 24-hour delay between the presentation and going on live. When they actually did the live sessions, really live, like live streaming, I don't think they were that comfortable with it then, and I don't think they're that comfortable with it now, and I don't know if they'll be doing much more of it. It was a chairperson selection, so what you would go on, and you didn't have any choice. You saw the session which had been chosen for you, so you couldn't really charge for that. But for the delayed thing of 24 hours or after the Congress, because it was an online platform sponsored by the sponsors, there was no distinction. And the number of sponsors every year increases, if that answers your question a bit, in the sense that the first year, I think there was possibly one sponsor, not good, but then after that, it went 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that answers your question a bit.
Yeah.
Because that's where the value was.
From your side?
For sponsorship for webcasts, I mean, for us, actually we've only had like up to two sponsors that have sponsored the webcast. But our webcasts are actually not available. They're available a week after the Congress had finished, because we need time to just go over all of them to make sure they're okay. We used to do it 24 hours, and I'm thinking about putting it back to 24 hours. We are looking into new platforms that allows us to do that more efficiently than we have been doing. So, because I think there is a value to be able, especially for the delegates, to be able to have a look at the webcast as soon as as soon as that session has finished.
Do you need the time to edit the content?
Yeah, we have to look at to make sure that it started at the right place, finishes at the right place, and make sure also that where the presenter has said that they don't want to have that slide available is correct, that it's not there. So there is a bit of editing that goes on.
Martin, what experience do you have with editing, and as a result of that, seeing that the content improves with a view to any sort of remote viewing activity?
The vast majority of the work we do doesn't get edited. It kind of comes back to the objectives. I think it's always objective driven as to what the the owner of the content wants. The vast majority of the work we do is they want to have the entire sessions available as quickly as possible. We do a lot of live, but if it's not going up live, then it can be up there very, very, very quickly afterwards. When we do edit, it is for the reasons, as you say, that it's not permissible to show a particular slide. But that's by and large the only editing we do of session content. It's different, of course, if somebody wants a highlights of the event, then 2 minutes highlights, then that's a different animal. Yeah. But again, that brings us back to the terminology thing as to exactly what is being required, what's being talked about with the particular activity.
Okay. Yeah, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say that if the objective is to really generate direct revenue from sales of this stuff, what I saw with PCMA, what I know from radiology, and I think from cardiology as well, will require some editing, because they'll have to clean it up and then bundle it, which is a nice word, and bundle it with other content which it might be from that congress, or it might be from other congresses or other stuff which they've got somewhere, and put that into a package, which is like a thematic package, which would be of interest to you. Yeah. And then you might be willing to pay some money for it. But in that case, then it has to be edited a bit to make it watchable.
Yes, so I think the other thing is if you've got, for example, a 4-day convention with multi-track rooms, then the way to make it attractive is to make it very searchable, so that people can go to a microsite and input specific details of a subject or a speaker or whatever they want to search by and find the assets that are of interest to them. I think making it accessible.
We have a question here.
Yeah, I'm not really... can you hear me?
Yeah.
Watched any conferences or anything later after a conference online, and we were just talking about, do people actually sit in a bath or whatever and actually sit and watch something on the screen that you're not in for the length of time of a session? If it's a 15-minute, 10-minute TED thing, I've watched those, and they're great, and they keep your attention. But if it was anything longer than that, do people actually want to listen?
Not really. They don't. They don't. First of all, people don't have time. You have to have time to be able to see a whole session. And that's one of the things that we're finding, that I think the average is about 5 minutes. So again, you have to consider that as a cost value thing. Is it?
Let's just do a check in the audience. Who of you has ever attended a virtual session of a conference or a meeting? Raise your hands. Okay. Who stayed on that for longer than 5 minutes? Leave your hands up. Who stayed on that for longer than 10 minutes? Leave your hands up. 15 minutes? An hour? 2 hours? Half a day? Yeah? Okay, so there's one diehard in the back there. So it gives you a bit of an impression, because it was quite a good start. So until 15 minutes we were okay, yeah. And then it sort of steeply went down.
Can I just disagree with Davi, because I think it's 100% depends on the subject matter and your audience, because we've seen lots of examples where people have stayed and watched live stuff and on demand for many, many hours, because it's their subject, because it's educational content, and they need to know about it.
Okay.
Equally, we've had other examples where people dip in and out for 30 seconds at a time. Or they just look for a particular speaker, see what they want to get out. And I think it is incredibly varied depending on the subject matter, the nature of the audience, the nature of why they are.
So how do you find out?
I was interested to hear all the trial and error that Davi's been doing in terms of charging structures, and the same applies, I think, to viewability. It's trial and error. We have a medical association client who has recorded their training courses for the last 4 or 5 years, keeps them all in an archive, and they monitor which are watched and push them forward, or remove things that don't get watched. But they keep them there for a very long period of time, and people watch them by the hour because it's got value over time.
And are those very specific web-based training videos? So I guess there's a difference. There's a difference between a gentleman standing for 3/4 of an hour behind a lecture going on and on and on and on and on and on and on, or something which has been specifically designed to train people through remote.
No, in that context, they are effectively conference presentations. They happen to be
Okay.
educational, but they are conference presentations.
Okay, good, interesting. There's a question over here, Judy. Yeah, and then we'll go to you. No, first, the lady here was first. I apologize, but fair enough.
I think Ben brought up a really good point about using these virtual events or webcasting and getting revenue that is not necessarily direct revenue. As a consultant, we did a study for an association, a European association, and we found out that a lot of the online content or the webcast content that was being looked at later was actually being used by professors and people and associate professors using those to get slides to teach with on there. So they're not sitting there looking for, and I think one thing that's really good that Davi brought up was that, yeah, they can look and pull out certain slides. So I think maybe it's not necessarily direct revenue that associations should be looking at, but indirect revenue. And if it's indirect revenue, then somehow you need to be measuring some other metrics. And what kind of metrics would you be looking at, and how would you do that?
What sort of indirect revenue do you have in mind, other than sponsors being interested?
Sponsors being interested, creating some sponsorship partners, also using that indirect revenue because you're getting more delegates to your congress, your events, your workshops, because they're seeing that information.
Yeah.
And there's also there was that figure which I was surprised when I saw it, and I don't think that they were exaggerating it, that for the ESC they had 950,000 page views. So that means the traffic on the website is enormous. So, I mean, and maybe they don't just leave the website afterwards. So just the real estate value of the website must increase if over 4 months or over a year, I think it was, you've got 1 million people going for one particular thing. So that's indirectly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, just increased membership is another good indirect effect. Next question.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I might be lost in translation here, but I get the understanding that you are talking about a hybrid meeting as just a stream. But to me, a hybrid meeting also needs a moderator, which is moderating the virtual audience in order that they can also ask their questions to the speakers, etc.
The ECR one, which is what I said was, for me, it was the most technically proficient and surprising. They had that. So they had every single session online live. So you'd see the speaker, you'd see the slides, you'd hear the speaker, and on the right-hand side, they had, I'm not very social media, but they had it seemed to be one stream where there were various social media platforms going in there, and they had a moderator who was, I think they must have had several moderators, who was juggling all of these questions. And some of them were technical, saying it's not working, blah, 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 and others were saying, where can I find out more about this speaker, and so on. And that's the real hybrid one, yeah, I agree.
Yeah? Does it answer your question? Yeah. Good. Next question. Which table had the next question? There were no more questions from the tables? Yes. Good, thanks. Yeah, just if you could just continue talking, it'll come on.
Okay. Well, I'm Thomas from the European College of Sports Science. Thank you very much for sharing your experience, especially sharing the failure. That was, thank you for doing this. We were wondering at the table that my take-home message is open up the content, because so far we've only done the recording for the members. And I was wondering, now that we open up the content, how could we possibly increase the visibility to it? Would you have any idea of maybe combining it with social media? So anything other than e-blast, really.
What have you tried? Or what have you seen tried, perhaps?
an example for radiology. If you go Google now, the European Society of Radiology, their Congress is way behind them, but you can't get into the website until you've gone through sort of a landing page, which is come and look at ECR live and pay 10 euros or whatever. So I mean, it's a way, but I should imagine they're doing that in everything they should do. I should imagine the back cover of every publication they've got has got ECR live, and they do lots of specialty events. They're probably promoting it there, and basically they don't let you get anywhere near the European Society of Radiology without being exposed to an advert for that thing. Okay. And if you're confident that the content is worthwhile, then you can do that. But I think you need to be selective, because if it's just everything...
Davi?
Yeah, I think, the way that we need to go is to use it as an extension to the Congress. And, it should be a further discussion of what's been happening at the Congress, and to use it more as an educational tool. So being selective and not having all the content available, which is what the same thing Ben said before, but then to be able to repackage it and use it by saying these are the key messages that are coming out of this Congress that are going to impact the way that you do your daily practice in the future. And I think that way, maybe people would be more likely you'll get more of a buy-in, but the repackaging of it has to be, I think, very short, and not something that's like an hour long or anything like that. I think someone did a study once to say that the maximum capacity of a human person's attention is about 25 minutes. So, it would be a challenge to do something in 25 minutes, but I think we need to be able to look at doing something like that. And so really you're looking at extension and not re-showing everything that's going on. You need to look beyond that, I think.
Well, I guess today's people's attention span depends a lot on how much Ritalin they take on a daily basis. But what sort of trends do you see, Martin, from the supply side? Where do you see associations going? What's the sort of demand that you get?
Well, just to come back, I think, Thomas, you were talking about how do you open up your content and therefore drive traffic to it. I mean, one of the ways that one of the things we're seeing being used an awful lot now is YouTube live streaming.
Could you repeat that?
YouTube live streaming. Okay. Because it's free. And of course, what you get through using that is the whole benefits of the whole YouTube, Google searchability. It's a very good service now, and that's a great... If the objective is to get eyeballs, which in a lot of cases it is, rather than generate direct revenue, it's about just getting more. I mean, as your example, it was about 950,000 page views. It's about getting eyeballs, getting people to be aware of it, raising the profile, and thereby, through other methods, generating revenue. Then YouTube is a great way to go. I mean, there are certain things about ownership of copyright and things that you need to be careful of, but if it can be in the public domain.
Let me ask another question to the audience. Just think about this for a couple of seconds. Who really believes here that by opening up content from previous meetings, you will get more attendance for future meetings? Raise your hands, please, if you think that is the case. Okay, so that's just, yes, a slight majority. Actually, not even so very slight. Interesting. Any comments on that?
No, I'm not surprised. No, I'm not surprised. That means we were convincing. But there was another thing which we didn't mention at all, which was, as an association, you need to offer your members and your leadership and your contributors the best possible exposure. And this is also a way of allowing your presidents and your chairmen and your speakers to think that you as a society are offering them a platform where they will go down in archives, or they'll be broadcast across the whole world, and that they can be viewed later on and they can be Googled and so on. And it is a way of giving value to your typical association leader.
Yeah, and you raised the point earlier on about the fact that you also have almost like the moral obligation to offer the knowledge to your community.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that there is a moral obligation to do that, that we should, you know, in doing congresses, we are there to educate. That's the prime objective. I hope that's a prime objective for most people, and it's not generating revenue. But, and we should, you know, that message needs to be translated, you know, outwards as much as possible, even to the people that don't attend the meeting, because, you know, if we want to change the way people are treating patients in the future, the conference has an impact. I had a discussion with Ellen about how would you measure impact, how would you measure the impact of your Congress on the delegate. Interesting discussion, that should be a topic for next time, I think. But yeah, I think we do have that moral obligation, and, you know, we are here to save lives. Well, for the medical associations, we are here to make sure that the patients get the better treatment. So yeah.
Okay, thanks, Martin.
Well, I accept the moral obligation, particularly in your field, but apart from that, from our point of view, and you might say I would say this, wouldn't I? But if you really think that your conference assets, that the conference content that takes so much resource and effort to put on, if you think it's only worth being seen once by the people who are lucky enough to be there, then I don't know, maybe you shouldn't be doing it at all. You know, if you've got content that's got value over time and beyond the four walls, then it's more than moral. I think it's crazy not to.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good point. Yeah, if it's not worthwhile to be seen twice, you know, what's the point of doing it once anyway? Yeah, good. Any further questions from any of the tables? Yes, good. Last question, yeah, and then we'll wind up.
I have a question about the sponsors. I mean, what do they get in return for sponsoring something like that? Is it like a little ad like on YouTube that you're sort of waiting to have access to your little film? I mean, basically that was a little bit of a joke, but what does the sponsor get out of it? What's the return on investment for the sponsor in sponsoring something like that?
They have logo placement on the webcast, but for them they see it as a way of supporting education, further education. That's what they would get out of it, and that's what they want to do more of.
Do they get to sell the drug, for example, or not?
No. And more, some companies actually don't want to even be recognised that they are supporting the educational activities. It's a company policy or something. So in certain cases, you won't even know that a company has sponsored the webcasts.
In that case, what's the value for them?
I think it's just that I would say this particular company, it's more to do with the moral obligation. It's more
corporate social responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of a corporate social responsibility aspect to it than anything else.
That's a drastic change to some of the things we've seen in the past, I guess.
Oh, they are changing. Well, that's tomorrow's conversation.
Don't want to be cynical there, but yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen.